5 a.m. in northern Tanzania. The sun hasn't risen yet.
But 3 Hadzabe hunters are already crossing the savannah with longbows in hand.
No flashlights. No modern equipment.
Only eyes trained for generations to read tracks in the dust. They carry arrows tipped with desert rose poison.
A toxin strong enough to bring down a 300-kilogram zebra.
A single shot. And then the waiting begins.
If you are passionate about wild animals and real documentaries, do not leave this video. Watch until the end, subscribe now to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The region where this happens is located in the Lake Eyasi Basin, a shallow salt lake that stretches for 1,050 square kilometers at the bottom of the Great Rift Valley. To get an idea of the size, it is as if the lake occupied an area equivalent to twice the city of Porto Alegre. The surrounding landscape is a mosaic of dry savanna, thorny acacia forests, and giant baobabs that seem to have been planted upside down. These baobabs can live more than 2,000 years and store up to 120,000 liters of water in their swollen trunks, which makes them vital sources of hydration during prolonged droughts. Rocky hills rise here and there, offering shelter and observation points. It is a harsh territory, punished by the sun during the dry season and transformed into a green carpet during the rains. And it is here that the Hadzabi have lived for at least 10,000 years, possibly much longer. Think about the dimension of this. While empires were born and disappeared in Europe, while pyramids were erected in Egypt, while China built its wall, the ancestors of these very people were already hunting zebras on this same piece of land. The DNA of the Hadzabe represents one of the oldest genetic lineages of humanity, diverging from other African populations tens of thousands of years ago. They are literally a living link to the most remote past of our species. Just 50 kilometers from here lies the Olduvai Gorge, often called the cradle of humanity, where fossils of Homo habilis were found dating back 1,900,000 years. Today there are approximately 1,300 Hadzabe, but only 350 still live in the traditional way, hunting and gathering as all previous generations did. The others were absorbed by the modern economy, working on farms, serving as tourist attractions, or simply trying to survive on the margins of a world that was not made for them. It is as if out of an entire city of people, only a small neighborhood still kept the original culture alive. The language these hunters speak while crossing the savannah is Hadzan, a language that linguists classify as an isolate, which means it has no known kinship with any other language on the planet. Hadzane uses click and pop sounds produced with the tongue against the roof of the mouth and the teeth, similar to those of the Khoisan languages of southern Africa, but genetically and linguistically separate from them. When a Hadzabe hunter spots a zebra track and wants to alert his companion without making noise, he uses a vocabulary of discrete clicks that blend in with the natural sounds of the savannah. The hunters who leave before dawn belong to the smaller group of traditionalists. They are men who learn to make bows before turning 10, who know every animal trail in the region, who can identify a zebra track among dozens of other marks in the dust. The knowledge begins early. 3-year-old boys already play with miniature bows, practicing their aim on lizards and insects near the camp. At 10 years old, most have already built their first functional bow and can hunt birds and rodents alone. Their sandals were traditionally made of zebra or wildebeest leather, although today many use soles cut from old tires. Adaptation is not a sign of weakness. It is proof that the Hadzabi culture has always known how to absorb what works without losing its essence. Likewise, bowstrings, which were formerly made exclusively of animal ligaments, today are sometimes replaced by nylon threads obtained in trades with neighboring tribes. The Hadzabe bow is a remarkable piece of primitive engineering. Made from the wood of the mutateco, a tree that grows along the rivers of the region, it measures on average 1.5 meters in length and requires a draw weight of 70 pounds to be completely stretched. For comparison, a modern, entry-level bow for beginners requires about 60 pounds. The Hadzabe pull heavier bows than recreational archers of the 21st century, and they do this since childhood. Researchers who tested Hadzabe bows in the field reported that the average force required was 311 newtons, with variations of up to 98 newtons, depending on the individual bow. The manufacture of a bow takes only a few hours for an experienced craftsman. The man selects a straight branch from the appropriate tree, removes the bark, carves the shape using a knife or axe blade, and adjusts the curvature by testing the tension repeatedly. The bows last from a few months to a year, depending on usage and climate. There is no sentimental attachment to these tools. When a bow breaks or loses elasticity, another is made. The ability to create one's own weapons is as important as the ability to use them. The traditional bowstring is made of supraspinous ligaments of animals, the band of fibrous tissue that runs along the spinal column. Impala and kudu ligaments are the most used today, but formerly buffalo, eland, and zebra ligaments were also used. The preparation process is laborious. The ligament needs to be removed from the dead animal, stretched and dried in the sun for several days. Then it is chewed to soften and finally shredded and braided into a strong rope that can withstand hundreds of shots. Women traditionally make the strings, and a man who is seen making his own string is usually of mixed origin or married into the tribe. But the true secret of the Hadzabi hunt lies not in the bow, it lies in the arrows. More specifically, in the poison they carry. The Hadzabe use 3 different types of arrows. The first type is for birds and small animals without poison, with light tips that do not damage the meat much. The second type is for small antelopes and dangerous animals at close range, also without poison, but with heavier metal tips capable of penetrating deeply. The third type is the poisoned arrow, reserved exclusively for big game: zebras, wildebeests, kudus, elands. Animals that can weigh from 200 to 900 kilos, the equivalent to the weight of 2 to 4 adult lions. The most common poison is extracted from the desert rose, a succulent plant with pink flowers that the Hadzabe call panjuko. This remarkable plant grows only in a few specific locations of the Hadzabe territory, making it a valuable resource that needs to be used sparingly. The extraction process begins with cutting the thick trunk of the plant, which is then hollowed out to expose the inner wood, rich in milky sap. This sap contains cardiac glycosides, chemical substances that directly affect the heart muscle. In sufficient doses, they cause arrhythmia and cardiac arrest. The hunters pound the wood until it forms a pulp, squeeze the juice into a container, and boil it over the fire until the water evaporates and only a black and sticky substance remains. The process can take hours, requiring constant attention to prevent the poison from burning. When it is ready, the consistency resembles clay. It can be carried in a ball and applied to the arrowheads when necessary, using a small stick to spread the substance evenly around the metal tip. An impressive detail. Some Hadzabi use the same pot to prepare the poison and to cook their meals. After cleaning well with water, a woman tastes it with her tongue. If it is still bitter, she washes it again. If it is not, the pot returns to culinary use. It may seem like carelessness to outside eyes, but it demonstrates a deep knowledge of the chemistry involved. The poison is dangerous when it enters the bloodstream through a wound, not when it is ingested in minimal quantities. There is also a second type of poison, extracted from a small tree called shanjo by the Hadzabi. In this case, the seeds are pounded and mixed with water, but are not boiled. A third poison, called kalakasi, does not grow in Hadzabi lands and is obtained ready-made through trades with neighboring tribes. Sometimes the 3 poisons are mixed to increase potency. Silence. That is the word that defines the Hadzabe hunt. Contrary to what tourism videos on YouTube show, where groups of hunters run through the savannah with packs of barking dogs, the true traditional hunt is an exercise in patience and invisibility. The Hadzabi, who still live authentically, do not use dogs. The animals would make too much noise, scaring the prey before the hunter could get close enough for an accurate shot. The main technique is the ambush. The hunter studies the movement patterns of the animals over days or weeks, identifies the water, points where they go to drink at dawn and dusk, the trails they use to move between grazing areas. Then he chooses a strategic spot, positions himself behind bushes or rocks, and waits, sometimes for hours. Immobility is absolute. Breath control is essential. A single sudden movement can alert the prey tens of meters away. Hunting can also be done by slow pursuit, especially by younger hunters. In this modality, two hunters follow an animal keeping enough distance not to startle it, but close enough not to lose sight of it. They take turns, one resting while the other maintains the pace. The goal is to tire the prey over hours until it slows down and allows an approach for the shot. Under the African sun, this technique requires extraordinary physical endurance. When the moment comes, everything happens fast. The hunter removes his sandals to avoid breaking dry twigs. He walks crouched, sometimes for hundreds of meters, approaching the prey without making a single sound. Breathing becomes shallow. Eyes do not blink. He chooses the poisoned arrow from his set, fits it to the bow, pulls the string until he feels maximum tension, aims at the animal's chest region, and fires. The impact does not kill immediately. This is the part that few understand about hunting with poison. The arrow penetrates the animal's skin, the poison enters the bloodstream, but death is not instant. The time varies according to the size of the animal and the potency of the applied poison. For an adult zebra of 300 kilos, it can take from 1 to several hours. The animal flees in fear. The hunter follows at a steady pace. Tracking is an art in itself. The Hadzabe read the ground like others read books. Footprints show speed and direction by the depth and angle of the marks. Drops of blood indicate the depth of the wound and the position of the arrow. Broken branches and trampled grass reveal where the animal passed. As the poison takes effect, the trail begins to get erratic. The animal staggers, changes direction for no apparent reason, stops to rest and starts again with difficulty. The hunters call this a drunken trail. And then, at some moment, the animal falls. Hunting is not always successful. Reports from anthropologists who lived with the Hadzabe describe attempts that failed because the arrow ricocheted off the hard head of a warthog, because a giraffe managed to metabolize the poison before it took fatal effect and escaped, because the animal was simply too far away for a precise shot. A chronicle from National Geographic narrates how a hunter named January pursued a giraffe for more than an hour after hitting it with a poisoned arrow, only to discover the next morning that the animal had overcome the poison and disappeared. Big game hunting is risky and uncertain. That is why most Hadzabe men do not dedicate themselves to it regularly. Many prefer to hunt smaller animals like dik-diks that weigh only 5 kilos, baboons, bush pigs, and birds like the guinea fowl, which are easier to kill and provide enough protein for the day. The great hunters, those who bring down zebras and giraffes, are a respected but not mandatory minority. But when a hunter brings down a zebra, the event transforms the life of the entire camp. The Grant's zebra, the most common species in the Lake Ayasi region, weighs on average 250 to 300 kilos. It is the equivalent of 5 or 6 adult men. It is enough meat to feed 20 to 30 people for several days. If the hunt happens far from the camp and the meat cannot be carried in a single trip, the procedure is different. The entire camp moves to where the carcass is. Families dismantle their huts of branches and grass in a matter of minutes, gather their few belongings, and walk kilometers to settle next to the felled prey. The zebra occupies a special place in Hadzabe food culture. Of all parts of the animal, one is considered a true delicacy: the stomach. Rich in digestive enzymes and partially fermented by the grass the animal consumed. In the hours prior to death, the zebra stomach is valued for its unique flavor and nutritional properties. It is an acquired taste, certainly strange to Western palates accustomed to clean and processed cuts of meat, but for the Hadzabe, it represents the best that the hunt can offer. Formerly, the Hadzabe hunted zebras frequently. 30 years ago, their territory still harbored large herds of wild animals, including zebras, giraffes, buffaloes, and even rhinoceroses and lions. They shared the land with these animals, maintaining a balance that worked for millennia. But the expansion of agriculture and livestock farming pushed the fauna into increasingly smaller areas. Today, most large mammals exist only within protected parks and reserves. Zebra hunting has become rare, a special event that happens when conditions are favorable and animals venture outside protection zones. The Hadzabe fire is not lit with matches or lighters. Men carry fire sticks with them, two pieces of wood that are rubbed rapidly against each other until the heat generated by friction ignites a handful of dry grass or tree bark fibers. The technique requires practice and arm strength, but an experienced Hadzabe can produce flames in less than a minute, even in conditions of moderate humidity. It is a skill that every boy learns before completely mastering the bow, and fire sticks are carried along with arrows on any journey. When the zebra carcass arrives at the camp, or when the camp arrives at it, the preparation process begins. There is no standardized butchery. There is no specific cut with a French name. The animal is opened with metal knives obtained by trade with the neighboring Datoga tribe, who are skilled blacksmiths. The viscera are separated carefully, each organ having its own destination. The meat is cut into pieces that vary according to immediate need and conservation capacity. A part of the meat is consumed immediately. The Hadzabi do not waste time when they have fresh food available. The pieces are skewered on sharp sticks and placed directly over the glowing embers, turning occasionally to ensure they roast evenly on all sides. There is no seasoning other than smoke and the natural salt of the meat. There is no elaborate side dish other than accumulated hunger. The meat is eaten as soon as it is ready, often still dripping hot fat that runs down the fingers. The smell spreads through the camp. Hunters eat first at the hunting site, when the prey is small. It is common for animals like birds, rodents, and small antelopes to be roasted and consumed right there, in the bush, without ever reaching the camp. The hunter lights a quick fire, prepares his solitary meal, and rests before continuing his activities. If meat is left over, he may take it to share with the family. If none is left, no one complains or questions. But with large animals like the zebra, the logic changes completely. The amount of meat far exceeds what a hunter or a small group can consume before it spoils in the African heat. And here enters one of the most notable and studied aspects of Hadzabe culture: mandatory sharing. In Hadzabe society, there is no accumulation of food resources. There are no barns to stock grain. There are no refrigerated warehouses. There is no private property of food beyond what is being consumed at that moment. What is hunted belongs to whoever is present at the camp. This means that if you arrive at a Hadzabe camp on the day a zebra was slaughtered, you eat zebra. It does not matter if you are from the hunter's family, if you are from another group passing through, if you are a completely unknown visitor. The meat is divided among everyone present. The hunter who killed the animal receives the animal's skin and his personal portion of meat, a recognition of his feat and his skill. But the rest is distributed without formal hierarchy. There is no chief to decide who receives what. There is no negotiation or exchange of favors. People simply approach and serve themselves, respecting an implicit logic of necessity and moderation that works without needing to be explained or imposed. Anthropologists, who have studied the Hadzabe for decades, describe this dynamic with admiration. In a culture where food can be abundant one day and completely scarce the next, sharing functions as a non-formalized collective insurance. The good hunter feeds others when he succeeds, knowing that he will be fed by others when his own luck changes. It is not charity in the Western sense of the term. It is deep reciprocity inscribed in the social fabric of the community. This absence of accumulation explains many other characteristics of Hadzabe life that seem strange to modern eyes. They do not build permanent houses because they have no goods to keep inside them. Their huts are simple structures of curved branches, covered with dry grass and leaves, assembled in a few hours and abandoned without remorse when the group decides to move to another area. There is no furniture. There is no decoration on the walls. There is no material attachment to objects. Each person carries only the essential: bow, arrows, fire stick, perhaps a metal knife, a gourd for water. The contrast with the modern world is brutal. We live in societies organized around infinite accumulation. We work to buy things that we keep in houses that we fill with more things that we rarely use. We measure success by the quantity of goods we possess and display. We build complex systems of property, inheritance, and asset protection that occupy armies of lawyers and accountants. And yet, anthropological research shows that the Hadzabi do not suffer from systemic hunger. In their oral history, transmitted from generation to generation, there is no record of periods of severe famine that have decimated the population. The flexibility of their diet, which includes meat from various animals, wild honey, tubers, fruits, berries, and baobab seeds, allows them to find food in practically any climatic or seasonal condition. A study conducted by researchers from Duke University revealed something even more surprising about Hadzabi metabolism. Despite being physically much more active than sedentary people in industrialized countries, walking on average between 8 and 14 kilometers per day, the Hadzabe spend approximately the same total amount of daily calories. The human body, scientists discovered, adjusts its metabolism according to the level of physical activity in a much more complex way than previously imagined. Hunters who walk kilometers per day do not burn significantly more total energy than office employees. The difference lies in how this energy is distributed and used. The Hadzabe spend it on productive movement, while sedentary people spend it on internal metabolic processes that may include chronic inflammation and other problems associated with the modern lifestyle. The meal of roasted zebra on the embers is not just food for the body. It is the center of social gravity of the entire camp. When the fire crackles and the meat roasts slowly over the orange embers, people gather naturally around. Stories are told in low voices. The recent hunt is narrated in vivid detail, from the first track spotted in the dust to the exact moment the animal fell. The elders of the group compare with their own experiences from decades ago, offer technical observations that the younger ones absorb in respectful silence. There is no formal school among the Hadzabe. There are no classrooms or designated teachers. Knowledge is transmitted like this, organically, in conversations around the night fire, in practical examples during daily activities, in gentle corrections when a young person makes a mistake. Children participate in this informal education as soon as they can walk. Boys of 3 or 4 years old already play with miniature bows made especially for their small hands, shooting at lizards, insects, and imaginary targets near the camp. At 10 years old, a typical Hadzabi boy has already built his own functional adult-sized bow and can hunt small animals, contributing real protein to the family diet. Girls accompany women on daily gathering expeditions, learning to identify edible plants among hundreds of species, to dig tubers with sharp sticks without damaging the root, to locate wild beehives by the flight pattern of the insects. This division of labor by gender exists but is fluid, not rigid or punitive. Hadzabi women have a degree of personal autonomy rare in traditional societies around the world. They participate in group decisions on an equal footing with men. They can leave a marriage that does not work simply by going back to wearing the clothes and ornaments of a single woman and returning to live with their family of origin. There are no formal marriage contracts. There are no property disputes. There is no payment of dowry or alimony. Children generally stay with the mother, who usually moves close to her own relatives. Night falls over the camp and the fire remains lit until the last embers. The Hadzabe have no formal religion in the Western sense of the term. There are no built temples. There are no ordained priests. There are no elaborate rituals of worship to specific deities. When asked about their beliefs by curious visitors, they answer that they exist because of the land they live on, and that they will always take care of this land that takes care of them. It is a practical and immanent spirituality, rooted in daily life, that does not separate the sacred from the profane into distinct categories. A successful hunt is a received blessing. The rain that fills the lake is a blessing. The baobab that offers nutritious fruits is a blessing. It is not necessary to go to a special place to find the sacred because it is present everywhere. When asked about the happiest day of their lives, the Hadzabi invariably answer with hunting stories. The day they killed the first baboon alone, the day they brought down a huge giraffe, the day they brought a fat zebra to the camp and fed dozens of people. Happiness for them is linked to demonstrated competence, to tangible contribution to the well-being of the group, to the mastery of ancestral skills that guarantee the survival of all. It is not happiness of consumption or accumulation, it is happiness of purpose and belonging. Meat that is not consumed immediately needs to be preserved in some way. The Hadzabi cut the remaining pieces into thin strips and hang them on branches to dry in the burning sun, a process similar to South African biltong. Dried meat can last for weeks without spoiling even in the heat, providing concentrated protein for periods between successful hunts. Nothing of the animal is wasted. Bones are broken to extract the nutritious marrow from inside. Tendons are kept dry to make bowstrings. The skin can be worked into leather for sandals, bags, or other practical uses. But the pressure on this ancestral way of life increases with every passing year. In the last 100 years, the Hadzabi have lost 90% of their traditional lands. The region that was once exclusively theirs now houses farms of Datoga herders, whose cattle and goats compete directly with wildlife for scarce water and pasture. National parks and game reserves were created to protect animals, but these protections also severely limit where the Hadzabe can legally hunt. International tourism brought some money to the region, but it also brought alcoholism and economic dependence. Deaths from alcohol poisoning have become a serious problem in some communities that receive tourists regularly. In 2007, the local government leased 6,500 square kilometers of Hadzabe land to the royal family of Abu Dhabi to use as a private sport hunting reserve. The Hadzabe were summarily evicted from lands where they had lived for millennia. Some resistors were imprisoned. After international protests and negative coverage in the world press, the deal was cancelled. But the episode dramatically illustrates the fragility of the Hadzabe position in a world where land is a valuable commodity. An important victory happened in October 2011 when a community of 700 Hadzabe finally received formal property titles over more than 20,000 hectares of ancestral land. It was the first time in history that the government of Tanzania officially recognized the territorial rights of a minority tribe. The Hadzabe celebrated this legal achievement, but knew that other communities still did not have the same protection. The fundamental question remains without a satisfactory answer. Is it possible to preserve a way of life based on hunting and gathering in a world of 8 billion people? Intensive industrial agriculture and accelerated climate change? The Hadzabe who still live traditionally occupy a tiny fraction of their original territory. They depend on wild animals that are also under increasing pressure from habitat loss. They face more frequent and unpredictable droughts that affect the availability of drinking water and plant foods. And yet, every morning the hunters go out. In the last 100 years, the Hadzabe have lost 90% of their lands. Herders invaded their territories. Governments tried to settle them in fixed villages. Missionaries offered food in exchange for religious conversion. Tourists transformed their hunts into a photographable spectacle. And still, at 5 in the morning, the men continue to go out with their 1.5-meter bows. The women continue digging tubers with the same sticks as always. The children continue learning to make arrows before turning 10. The Hadzabe do not need clocks because they wake up with the sun. They do not need refrigerators because they eat what they hunt on the same day. They do not need fences because they do not believe that the land belongs to anyone individually. In a world that runs frantically to accumulate more and more, they walk slowly through the savannah and carry only what is strictly necessary. The roasted zebra on the embers is not just nutritious food. It is living proof that there is another way to live, another way to relate to the land and to other human beings. And as long as there is a Hadzabe preparing poison for his arrows in the shade of a 1,000-year-old baobab, this way of living will continue to exist.